For decades, Russia has played a patient game, watching Europe hesitate, debate, and move slowly. Moscow thrives in the gray zone, exploiting the messy window where NATO's response lags and ambiguity buys room to maneuver. But something is changing, and it's not some miracle weapon, it's time. And the country resetting the clock is Greece. By 2026, a critical shift will be underway. The slow, uncertain window Russia loves to exploit is shrinking. For most of the last 2 decades, Greece's military was seen as a regional force focused on Turkey, constrained by debt after the financial crisis. Even within NATO, it wasn't considered a pillar of wider deterrence beyond the Aegean. That picture is now completely outdated. What we're seeing is one of Europe's most accelerated military modernization cycles. This isn't just a one-year spending spike. It's a long-term plan focused on readiness, interoperability, and staying power. And here's the key shift. Greece isn't just getting stronger, it's becoming harder to bypass. 2026 is the year where these upgrades stop being announcements and start showing up as routine, daily capability. We're talking about aircraft that can sustain a high operational tempo, ships that contribute to the wider NATO naval picture, and bases that support allied operations without waiting for a crisis to become a panic. This is the first major flip. By 2026, Greece stops feeling like a regional player and starts functioning like a southern multiplier inside NATO's daily operating network. This matters because of where Greece is. The Eastern Mediterranean isn't a side theater, it's the junction linking Europe, the Middle East, and North Africa. It's a crossroads of critical NATO logistics, air corridors, and sea routes. Russia's posture in Syria and its wider Mediterranean presence has long benefited from a southern flank that often felt politically divided and operationally uneven. Greece's rebuild challenges that comfort not with chest-thumping, but with structure. This isn't about shiny new toys or prestige platforms. It's about plugging into NATO sensors, command structures, and operating pictures and staying there. Russia doesn't need Greece to threaten Moscow directly for the balance of power to change. All Greece has to do is remove Russia's options, reduce ambiguity, make the southern operating space harder to exploit, increase the cost of pressure campaigns that rely on intimidation more than open confrontation. That's what this modernization really does. It changes the timetable. For years, Russia's playbook benefited from compartmentalization. Apply pressure here, wait for hesitation there, and bet that coordination arrives late. Greece is turning that bet into a serious risk. The country is shifting from deterrence by simple presence to deterrence by endurance. We're talking air power designed to keep flying, naval forces designed to control space, and layered defenses that complicate both conventional pressure and gray zone mischief. This isn't Greece becoming aggressive. Greek officials frame it as defensive and alliance-aligned. But deterrence works precisely because it denies comfortable assumptions. Russia assumed Greece would remain a secondary factor. By 2026, that assumption becomes a liability. If you want to see where this shift will be unmistakable first, just look up. Airspace control in the Eastern Mediterranean is the foundation for everything else. Naval movement, base security, logistics, and the ability to operate under pressure. For years, the Hellenic Air Force was capable but stretched great pilots, solid aircraft, but limited depth for sustained operations. That model is changing. Greece has been acquiring new Rafale fighters and modernizing its F-16 fleet, but it's not just about the jets. It's how they fit into the network. Modern air warfare isn't decided by who has the most advanced fighter. It's decided by who sees first, decides faster, and operates seamlessly within a shared picture of data links and sensor fusion. From Moscow's perspective, that shrinks the margin for error it once relied on. In the past, Russia could assume NATO's air response in the region would be led by a small core of allies, with others joining late. A modern, interoperable Greek Air Force adds another credible player right at the start. Then comes air and missile defense. Greece already fields high-end systems like the Patriot, and the broader NATO trend has been toward tighter regional integration. The outcome isn't invincibility, it's behavior change. It forces adversary aircraft to fly more cautiously, it narrows their routes, and it makes their missions more costly and complicated. Air defense shapes choices even when it never fires a shot. By 2026, Greek air power will be less about surging for a moment and more about sustaining the tempo. Russia's coercion model often depends on the target tiring out first. A force built for endurance refuses to tire on schedule, but control of the sky is only half the equation. If air power decides who sees first, naval power decides who gets to move. By 2026, Greece is shaping the eastern Mediterranean into a much less permissive space for any power trying to operate quietly. For years, Russia's Mediterranean fleet benefited from fragmented regional navies and slow coordination. Those conditions are fading. Greece's naval modernization, including new French-made frigates, isn't about matching Russia ship for ship. It's about controlling space and access in ways that constrain an adversary's planning before a crisis even begins. When a navy can consistently track movements, an opponent's freedom of action shrinks even without a shot being fired. And Greece sits near key maritime corridors. The Aegean Sea and the approaches to the Eastern Med are arteries. Control doesn't require a blockade. It requires awareness, presence, and the ability to deny comfort. This is where maritime surveillance becomes decisive. The whole point is interoperability, shared communications, shared tracking, shared decision loops. A Greek observation is no longer just a Greek observation. It's instantly part of the NATO-wide picture. The sea starts behaving more like airspace, transparent, tracked, and less forgiving of uninvited movement. Russia hates that. By 2026, the Eastern Med will feel less like open water and more like managed terrain watched, coordinated, and faster to respond. Greece doesn't slam the door shut. It just crowds the hallway. And crowded hallways are where miscalculation becomes very expensive. Here's the bigger problem for Russia. The Black Sea no longer stays contained. Pressure applied there now spills outward into the Aegean and the Eastern Mediterranean. What used to feel like separate theaters now behave like connected compartments. And Greece sits right where those spillovers collide. While the Montreux Convention still limits warship access to the Black Sea, NATO has found ways to compensate. If you can't maintain a constant naval presence inside the sea, you build persistence around it, air patrols, surveillance, and logistics hubs. This is where Greece becomes decisive. The Eastern Med becomes a staging ground where NATO can watch, posture, and reinforce. Greece has the bases, ports, and airfields to make that staging ground function under stress. Speed is exactly what Russia wants to avoid. Moscow benefits when pressure moves faster than coordination. Integrated allies shrink that window. Russia doesn't worry about Greece because of its size. It worries about Greece because of its placement. By 2026, Greece is no longer just guarding its borders. It's acting as a connective hinge between the Aegean, the Eastern Med, and NATO's entire southern command. Russia's strategy prefers ambiguity, naval presence without combat, air probing without confrontation, political signaling that tests reactions. A more integrated, persistent Greek posture erodes that ambiguity. Movements are seen earlier, patterns are tracked longer, and escalation becomes a conscious decision, not a probe. This forces Moscow into a choice it dislikes: escalate in a way it doesn't want to, or exercise restraint it can't fully control. The real currency of Russia's pressure model is tempo. Moscow rarely begins with a direct confrontation. It begins by touching the system lightly, a patrol that feels routine, a deployment that looks familiar. The goal is to create uncertainty and make others hesitate. But what happens when that uncertainty is stripped away? When actions that once floated in ambiguity start leaving clear traces, visible to multiple allies at once, the gray zone stops being a shelter. It becomes a spotlight. This is where Russia's most valuable advantage, ambiguity, begins to run on a clock. Greece's role after 2026 is to shorten the moment when everyone is still asking, is this real? When allies see the same pattern early, the first days of confusion disappear. A strategy built on blur suffers badly when clarity arrives too soon. Finally, there's endurance. Pressure campaigns often assume the target will tire first, but a force that can sustain its presence turns that logic on its head. By 2026, Greece will be positioned to contribute to that endurance. Readiness becomes routine, not exceptional. Integration happens daily, not just in a crisis. This changes the psychological calculus for Russia's planners. When they assume their movements will be seen, that pressure won't stay quiet, and that the southern flank won't be slow, caution increases, and caution is the tax Russia hates paying. So no, Greece isn't becoming a superpower. It's becoming something far more disruptive to Russia's preferred way of operating, a strategic obstacle. An obstacle to timing, to ambiguity, and to the assumption that NATO's southern flank is a weak link. And that kind of problem doesn't fade with time, it compounds. Because every year Greece stays integrated, the quiet window Russia once relied on gets smaller. And once it closes, it is very, very hard to reopen. Thanks for watching. If you found this analysis interesting, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more content like this.